household management was the main underlining cause of what happened. It's very important that a man maintain his household in righteousness and in fairness, but also in order. And sometimes that can be a hard balance, especially if both parties are not serving the same God the way he wants to be served. You know, if the man or the woman are not really sincere about serving the God of the Bible on his terms, then you're going to have conflict. Because we even see in the secular system, you know, in the secular system dealing with Esther, the king that was in charge of everything, you know, he wasn't he wasn't a a servant of the Most High per se. All right, he was a carnal man and probably had some idolatrous systems going on, but they wanted to make sure they had order within the household. Um, so now we can kind of take it one or two ways. We have the original Esther, okay, which is Mordecai's dream comes at the first. That original chapter of Esther is supposed to be Mordecai's dream. The one where it says, "Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus." This is Ahasuerus which reigned from India even to Ethiopia. Um, that's actually chapter 1, but it's the second chapter in the original Greek layout of the chapter. But I think it's important to begin with that chapter. But the other chapter has like 22 verses. This chapter has about 17 verses, but it goes into the dream, because Mordecai had a dream about all of this stuff before the situation rose up with Esther. And that's not something you get if you're using the King James Apocrypha, because it's listed as additions to Esther. It's not listed as the first chapter. When you go into the Lexham English Septuagint that I'm using, it lists that dream as the first chapter. All right. But I won't, for time's sake, I won't go into that dream, per se. What I'll do is go into the regular first chapter that we're all used to get into how everything started off. All right, and then maybe we can go into another aspect of it, during the. So I'm gonna read it, and it happened that after these matters, in the days of Ahasuerus, this Ahasuerus ruled over 127 territories from India. Okay. In those days, when Ahasuerus was enthroned in the city of Susa in the 3rd year of his reign, he prepared a banquet for his friends and for the rest of the nations and for the honor of Persia and Media and for the rulers of his satrapies. Now, we must bear in mind that this is talking about Iran. We have so many things that are happening globally and personally amongst us that coincide with what we're reading about. This is about the territory of Iran. And what it's telling you is that Iran was once hospitable toward the Israelites. Susa is a province that's in Iran. All right. Media in Persia is Iran and Iraq. The Medes, of course, come from the family of Japhet. So those people in Iran are not Edomites, they're not Arabs. They may be Muslims, but they practice a different form of Islam called Shiite Islam, and they don't come from the Arab families. All right. And if truth be told, they were one of the main forces behind the early development of Islam. All right. Architecturally, scientifically, things of that nature. Verse 4. And afterward, after he had shown the written out, he wants this big celebration for everybody to come through and celebrate with him, as well as display his wealth and opulence. Verse 4, and afterward, after he had shown the riches of his kingdom and the glorious splendor of his wealth over 184 days. All right. So this is like almost like half a year. Imagine what you have and how much you have for over more than the course of 6 months. You're showing people all of this magnificent display of wealth and power and authority. All right. Verse 5 says, when the days of the wedding feast were completed, the king held a drinking party for the people who were found in the city. It lasted for 6 days in the courtyard of the king's house. Now, this is what would be what we would call like something like a Mardi Gras or a reveling. All right, so they're drinking alcohol. You know what happens when people start to drink a lot of alcohol? All right, no matter if it's clear or dark liquor. All right, prende la luz y abre la cortina, por favor. All right, it says the courtyard was adorned with fine linen and cotton cloths that was stretched by cords. That was stretched by cords. That was stretched by cords of fine linen and purple, fastened to rings of gold and silver on pillars of marble and stone. So they couldn't outdo the Most High, because the Most High had pillars of wood plated with gold over top of the solid, hard wood. All right. It says there were couches of gold and silver on a precious pavement of emerald, pearl, and marble, and diaphanous mattresses variously adorned with flowers, and roses were scattered round about. So this is a magnificent display. When it talks about the mattresses, it's talking about we had the thick couches back in the day, cushions, stuff with it, of course, the finest of material, and the best looking tapestry was over it. They just found out recently that in the palaces of Iran, of the Persian Mede Empire, guess what kind of stone they had? They had alabaster stone, thick or thin sheets, which is like translucent. It's like you can, like, it lets light. It's a rock. It's dense and it lets light through it. All right. So you have like a sheet that's like maybe 3 millimeters big, or maybe like 4 inches thick and strong, supported at the bottom. And what they did was used to use these as floors. So you can't see exactly what's going on through the floor, but the light from the bottom or on the top of it will shine to the other area, Chaya. So you can see. So as you look at the floor, and it's like it's lighting itself. The whole floor is lit up. So it's not like you're looking at just a solid surface. So this is what is going on, in the Middle East at this, or so-called Middle East at this time. The drinking vessels were of gold and silver, and there was a small cup of carbuncle, an exhibit worth 30,000 talents. That was the value, all right, of everything that we had, that he had at that time. There was abundant sweet wine, which the king himself drank. Now, this drinking party did not take place according to prescribed law, but as the king wanted. And he commanded his stewards to fulfill his and his people's desires. So he commanded the people that were in charge of his households and of his different facilities to give everybody what they wanted, fulfill his and his people's desires. So they said, you know what, I want a lamb chop, but I want it cooked in cardamom and cardamom and turmeric, garlic, and they would go and do that. So you have to understand what it's saying. Like, this is a big display. Imagine you going someplace and they're giving you exactly what you want to eat, all expenses paid. So this is what's going on. All right. Now, verse 9. Queen Vashti also held a drinking party for the women in the palace where Ahasuerus dwelt. So he gave her, because of course she had her own palace, but he gave her access to his palace. Why? Because he wanted to display his wealth to the wives of these women. Like, we were in the king, you in the king's palace? Yeah, we were in the king's palace. And his wife Vashti, she had this event going on. So she's having a drinking party. All right. A drinking party just means a bunch of alcohol, dancing, and probably a lot of lasciviousness, and maybe some sprinkles of fornication going on also. So it says Queen Vashti also held a drinking party for the women in the palace where King Ahasuerus dwelt. All right, verse 10. Now, on the seventh day, when he was merry, so he was, full of wine, feeling himself, he was happy. The king told Mehuman, Biztha, Harboni, Bigtha, Zethar, Abagtha, and Karkas, the seven eunuchs who were the court servants of King Ahasuerus, to bring in the queen before him so that she might reign and put on her diadem, and so that she might show the rulers and the people her beauty, because she was beautiful. So this was a very attractive woman. And the king is saying, man, my woman looks so good. I want everybody to see, how good my woman looks. I want everybody to see how good my woman is looking. All right. So now he's telling, this is a big old wedding celebration. So he's saying, look, I want to bring my woman here. And he tells us big. Now I want to point out that the word eunuch from its origin means like a guardian, a chamber guardian. So it didn't always mean a person, a man that had his member affected. It means a chamber guard, a guardian of the chamber. Now he said the woman needs to come. Send in 7 men, bring her here because I want the people to see how beautiful she is. Now remember, she's over there with the girls, with the ladies, the women, and they're partying, drinking alcohol. All right. So he says, hey, tell Vashti to come here so that I can put the crown on her, right? He want to crown her in front of everybody. Like, what woman would refuse that? The man wants to take this crown and put it on his woman's head. It's for everybody to see, right? It's a good thing. Would you think your wife would say, no, I don't want to come in and show that I'm the queen and put the crown on? Would you think your wife would do that? Your wife be like, oh yeah, I'm Ariasha's woman. Yeah, put the crown on. You know what I'm saying? She said, "Hech kolaval." All right. So now she don't want to. She doesn't want to comply. Let's read about that. Verse 12. But Vashti refused to come with the eunuchs, and the king was grieved and angry. Very, very important point. He expected his wife to comply with what he wanted, right? Not to say, well, I don't want to do what you want me to do, so I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do what you want me to do. So I'm not going to listen to you. So when she says I'm not going to listen to you, I'm going to do it my way, who's in charge? When she says I'm not going to listen to you, who's in charge? And if he says, okay, baby, that's okay. Who made the final decision? Who's in charge at that point? She is, right? She's in charge, right, Amaria? She said, I'm not going to listen to you. So now that pattern of behavior, the king recognizes it. The king recognizes it. The king says, hold up, I told her to come. And she's saying she's not going to come before me. So let's see what happens. He became angry, all right, and grieved. Why is he? We can understand him being angry, right? First of all, let's identify that. He became angry because she didn't want to come to him. So it wasn't like, okay, king, do up with your wife according to understanding as with the weaker vessel. All right. What is a vessel for? To contain something. And what does it mean when it says this vessel is weaker? It can't carry as much, right? So it says giving honor and understanding to the woman, right, as a weaker vessel. So, which means when you put something onto her that she can't carry, when you put something onto her that she's not able to lift or hold, that's when you have that honor and understanding as a weaker vessel. So the question is, did Vashti have legs? Right? Did she have legs? Did she have clothes? Did she have ears? Did she have eyes? Did she have a mouth? The question is, could Vashti carry, could she carry that order? Could she carry it? Was the king asking her to do something that she was incapable of doing? Nah. So this isn't a honor as unto the weaker vessel type of scenario. That's why, the king becomes angry. So that explains one emotion. Jay, you wanted to ask something? Your hand is up, Jay. I don't know if that's an accident or not.
Like, I have something just to add to the vessel. A vessel is always something to pour into.
Right.
So that's another way of putting it too. Like, even though it's a weaker vessel, and you got to just pour into it.
Kind.
That's all it is.
Exactly. If you don't pour into it, it just, is empty. It's empty. So good point. You pour into that vessel. Like the scripture says also, can the pot say unto the potter, why hast thou made me thus? As Paul talks about. So can the vessel say, well, put more into me, give me, you deal with that vessel according to honor and understanding that the vessel is weaker. So you can't put everything into the vessel all the time like the vessel wants. The vessel may think it's ready, but it may have to be seasoned some more. It may have to be fired, some more. If you bring a girl, a wife, a woman from the city, and you bring her into the country, right? You bring her to the country, you can't just send her into a pasture full of bulls and heifers and say round them up. Right? You can't do that. Can you do that? You can't go out there and round them up. She sees those big horns, right? And she sees these big, 2,000-pound animals, 1,000 pounds, these horses, and she's like, well, hold up, I don't. So you have to ease her into and show her how to do it. She may say, I'm ready for it. You may have a horse out there that's very, finicky, very uncooperative. I want to ride this horse. And if she says, well, if you say, no, you're not ready for that horse, you can ride this horse. And you say, well, she said, I want to ride this horse now. No matter how much she persists, you can't let her get on that horse. Why? Because she could break her ankle, her leg, her back, her spine, her shoulder, get a concussion, because this horse can sense if you're a timid rider. So no, you can't ride this horse. So you still have to make that executive decision. So you pour into her according to what she can withstand not just according to what she tells you she wants from you. Okay. Jay, what you want to say something now, Jay? I see a lot of hands up. You could unmute yourself and say what you wanted to say if you wanted to say something. All right, anybody with their hand up want to say something, you can unmute. Okay, go ahead.
I just want to ask about the example of giving honor to the weaker vessel, just for clarification. Like, can you give an example? You were saying what Vasti did was not a good example because that's not giving honor to the weaker vessel. I understand that, and I agree with that. But I'm asking, can you give an example, and what way can that be used today on giving honor to the weaker vessel?
Yeah, like the example I gave about, about if you marry a woman from the city and you bring her into the country, that was the example. So you give honor to her vessel she's her vessel. She's not able to go out there and round up those cows and round up those those bulls and heifers. All right, so that's one example. So basically, weaker vessel meaning anything that she is actually not able to bear, to do, or to carry. That would be, so giving honor to her as a weaker vessel, meaning not asking her or not expecting her to do something that she literally and actually, can't do, putting more on her than she herself and Yahweh expects her to be able to, to manage. As far as giving another example about that, sometimes we've had to go to different cities and we've had to get up at 2 in the morning to start getting ready, but we may not get into bed until 12. So we're physically able to do that. All right. But now 1 hour, it's not going to be able to get done. A lot of women can function on 1, 2, 3 hours, but some people can't. So if you know that your woman personally, an hour after she goes to sleep, she's knocked out, giving honor to her as that weaker vessel, if she hasn't developed a different sleep pattern, means that not to expect her to get up and do what you want her to do after only 1 hour of sleep after being up all day. A man, you can just you'll keep shaking him and he'll eventually, wake up. But for a woman, she may not wake up when you try to wake her up. So just that's an example of giving honor unto that weaker vessel. But it's a personal case by case type of situation because every vessel isn't the same. There is some consistency in vessels, but every vessel isn't the same. All right.
That makes sense, Tawana.
I bar. And because women, truth of the matter is, when it comes to certain things, women are very strong. Women are very strong. Women hear, if there's a person that is if there's a person that's crying, the woman will hear that crying in sleep. A man may not. There's a baby. We've had instances where babies were falling, and the father will put that hand out and grab the baby real quick. So each one has a different superpower that they bring to the league of babies, to the hall of parenthood. But if you understand and know that this woman and this man are capable of different things in different areas, then the weaker vessel aspect of it is applying to the situation. It's not one thing across the board because, like I said, all vessels are different and all vessels aren't the same, and each one has its own purpose and its own strength. So yeah, and again, it has to be something that the woman, I'm not talking about something that, I don't like or I don't want or I'm not comfortable, because sometimes you have to do things, like that. And almost everybody, whatever people's hangups are, almost majority of the people in jail comply. You get far less resistance from a person in jail than you do in the real world. Why? Because they don't want to be in isolation. They don't want to be in the hole. They don't want to be locked in their cell. They want to be able to get out for more than an hour. They want yard time. They want to be able to go into the common areas with the other prisoners. So they comply easily in jail. So we can get over those psychological objections when we need to and when we want to as humans. So we're talking about something that's, it's physically impossible for this person to do this, or the person may have, a very deep, dark phobia about something. All right. So giving honor to the weaker vessel is, that this woman is deathly afraid of the dark. She has to have a little nightlight on. And when you cut that nightlight off, she goes into a frenzy and she just loses it. So giving honor to the woman as the weaker vessel means, you know what, we're going to leave the nightlight on, but we're going to start to dim it down over the next 3 months. We're going to dim it down because I can't sleep with the nightlight on, but you need the nightlight on, things like that. I think Masha and then Jay, and then Masha and then Jay, and then Eliyahu. I don't know if Jay's saying you can't hear. We might need to just keep coming back. Masha, what do you want to say?
I just wanted to say that a lot of what you're saying is dealing with two pillars of wisdom. The first one is understanding, and the second one is discretion. Having an understanding of where to apply this, and then the plan on how you're going to apply that when it comes to your rib.
Con, exactly. So you got to walk everything through the 7 pillars of wisdom, especially when it comes to practical applications of the verses, in your life. Walk those verses through the 7 pillars. Jay, I don't know if your hand is up because you can't hear, but if you want to say something, go ahead and unmute. I know you said you couldn't hear, but can you hear now? If not, you may want to just go on over to YouTube. All right, Eliyahu, what do you want to say?
Yeah, another way too. I know we don't want to stay on it too long, but just real quick, another way of honoring the weaker vessel. So say I'm on my way on a mission, and my wife, sometimes the Most High speak to your wife, or your rib, and she got to give you a message. I believe it was Pilate. The Pilate's wife kept saying, "Don't do that to that man.
Right.
Don't do that." And the weaker vessel come to you and say, "Hey, I wouldn't recommend that. Don't do that." And you're like, "Well, I gotta go do it." She's like, "I've been having dreams." And sometimes and honor is another thing. Like, how do we honor the Most High? Is to listen and obey. Or if they say something. So to me, whenever the weaker vessel have visions or dreams or whatever, like you said, our rib is powerful. The Most High will come to her before coming to you. Sometimes, And so I think that's another way of honoring, is if she's telling you something or the Most High gave something to her, I think we should take heed to that. So I think that's another way of, another form of honoring. The same way we honor the Most High. You tell us to do something, we got to listen or need to listen. So that's all I have. I yield.
And with that being said, also, if you read the verse, it says, "Likewise, you husbands dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered." 2 things I want to point out from this verse. Number 1 is the fact that if something is weaker, you as the head have the responsibility to make that thing stronger. So if you are a husband, all right, if you are a man of a woman, you should be working to make that woman stronger, not to force, anything to be what it's not. So working to make it stronger. That's another aspect we need to look at that's not really addressed acutely in the verse, but it is addressed cryptically in the last part when it says that your prayers be not hindered. The stronger you are spiritually, the stronger your wife is spiritually, then the stronger your prayers become spiritually before the Most High. So that's why it says that your prayers be not hindered, meaning your prayers together as man and woman, or as a man, can be hindered if the wife, if the wife is weaker, and if you're not dealing with her according to knowledge, and if you're not giving honor to the woman as a weaker vessel. So the overall part that we need to focus on is not that the vessel is weaker, but that the vessel needs to be strengthened so that your whole family unit becomes stronger through your efforts going into Ephesians 5, right? Of cleansing and washing with the water by the word, into the context of your family unit. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So it's so normally it doesn't say where her faith is weaker, that her intelligence is weaker, that her inheritance is weaker. The Greek word focuses on the physical weakness also, but we know that according to the context of the chapter, no matter if the word is used that way, usually we know anytime we're dealing with the Bible, we're dealing with spirituality of the things that are said. So we have the knowledge, so we give them the knowledge. So first of all, you have to understand the knowledge of the Bible, the knowledge of marriage, and the knowledge of women. A lot of men don't understand these things. So when they're dealing with their wife, they're not dealing with their wife according to knowledge. They're dealing with their wife according to tradition, according to society, or according to influence outside of the Bible. And that can be very harmful to your marriage. So a house arrest is very much in order. He's not wrong for what he's trying to do. All right. So write that down, Masha. We'll come back to it. So let's continue with the verses. All right. It says, now check this out now. Let's go to verse. So he was grieved also. Make sure you write it down. Why was he grieved? He was grieved because it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment, and it's a bad example. It's a bad example. It's almost like you tell your son, you tell your 3-year-old, hey, go put on some clothes. And that 3-year-old goes and digs into the dirty clothes basket and get the dirty soiled clothes and comes out to the party that you're having, to the gathering that you're having with all these dirty clothes on. People are like, oh man, why your son got on them dirty clothes, and what's going on with it? Why you don't wash your clothes? Or so now it's like an embarrassment. All right. But in this case, Vashti is an embarrassment to her husband, but now the grief is like, oh wow, why is it a grief? Because now I'm gonna have to deal with this matter that I really don't want to deal with, because other people are watching. Other people are noticing what she's doing, because everybody knows I called her and that she has refused to come. Verse 12, but Vashti refused to come, and the king became grieved and angry. Verse 13, then he said to his friends, because of these things that Vashti has spoken. Right. So the king, he had his friends there, and he said to his friends that were there, these are high level officials. What did he say? He said, because of what Vashti has spoken. What did she speak? The scriptures don't tell you, what she said. The scripture says Vashti refused to come. So whether it was her actual words that were repeated, or whether it was her refusal, that was a loud message that was received into the ears of his spirit, because of these things that Vashti has spoken. So it wasn't just a refusal to come, right? Why did he say these things, because her refusing to come is one thing. So not only did she refuse to come, the king was able to sit back and analyze the implications of her actions. This is seditious. This is rebellion. This is disrespect. This is dishonoring me as a man. This is dishonoring me as the king. This is an embarrassment. She's trying to embarrass me. So he's taken all of these things, he's taken what she's done, and he's multiplying their impact. He's multiplying their indication. He's multiplying all of the different areas that are going to be impacted by her one decision not to come before him when he called her. Okay. So then it says, the king said, make a law and judgment concerning this matter. So he said, make a law and a judgment. So we're going to judge this matter. And once we judge this matter, we're going to make that judgment be a law. Because remember, in the Hebrew concept, law is instruction. You're instructed to or not to do something. All right. So make a law and judgment concerning the matter. So Arkesoios and Sarsathais, and Malesear, the rulers of the Persian and the Medes, who were near the king, the first in importance, the ones who sat beside the king, came to him. So oftentimes the king had three very close rulers that were under him. Sometimes in the scripture it calls them three presidents. So the king had three close counselors, all right? But they also were rulers, but they were under him. And they reported to him, according to the laws, how it was necessary to deal with Queen Vashti, because she had not done the things which were commanded by the king through the eunuchs. So a dishonor of the king's message through his messenger was a dishonor to the king. Okay. So they're saying we got to check into our laws. So for us, it's like, let's look at the Torah. Let's look at wisdom. Let's look at the Bible, and let's see how we can resolve this rebellion, this refusal of the queen to obey the king, to come to, and it's very important. It's very strange because the king simply wanted her to relocate her body. Take your body from where it is and bring it to where I am. And when you come to this place, you will get the honor that you deserve as my woman. And I was having a conversation, last night, and I was saying that you have different levels. You can be happy and you can obey the Most High, but sometimes you may have to obey the Most High at the expense of your happiness, and then the joy will come if you walk in the spirits, because that's the second fruit of the spirit. If you love the Most High, then you will have joy eventually. But if you disrespect the Most High, you will never have any lasting love and joy and peace. So in a conversation I was having, with a family yesterday, I said, well, if a person is gay against the laws of the Most High and they're happy in a relationship and they find out that they're not supposed to be homosexual according to the laws of the Bible, and then they say, well, I'm happy, so I'm not going to obey Yahweh. And that's wrong, but they say that they're happy. Or they can say, man, you know what? I really like this homosexual relationship. It satisfies my emotions. It makes me feel happy, but Yahweh said not to do it. So I'm going to stop it. Now, for the first few days or weeks or months or even years, they may have a deep sadness in their spirit because they're becoming a new person. They have to resist temptation. But eventually they will have that happiness, that joy, let's call it love, joy, all right, and peace. They eventually will have that love and that joy because that's one of the fruits of the Spirit. And if they walk in the Spirit, they'll get the fruits of the Spirit. Okay? So this is what we're looking at. So Vashti, even though she didn't want to come, even though she had a funky attitude about obeying her husband, if she would have come and she had that crown put on her head, and the people out there like, Queen Vashti, and clapping for her, and they make do her little, what they call that, do a little curtsy for Vashti. Vashti, Queen Vashti. All of that sadness and resistance is going to go away, right? No woman is going to be on display before an empire and be sad that the people are clapping for her, or applauding her, or acknowledging her and her beauty. But the problem is that she let her beauty probably get to her head. I look too good. I'm his wife. I ain't got to do what he said. I'm going to show him who's the boss, who's really running things. Our meetings are going so. Me rule. Uno no big up our house shows, big up Queen Vashti. Me are the gal done and I this thing, yeah. Our meetings are going so. So Vashti like, I'm the ruler now. All right. So this is what's going on. So, but she had to work against that what? That's one of the fruits of that's one of the works of the flesh. It's literally called sedition, rebellion against a lawful authority. That's sedition. It could be against your father. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm sleeping in my father's house, all right, and I'm a grown man with children, got my own family, right? I tell children what to do. If my father comes at 2 o'clock and says, hey man, I need you to go outside and look at my glove compartment and give me that piece of paper with John's number on it. So I'm gonna need to call him about. I'm gonna need to call him in the morning. Get the piece of paper with his number on it and just put it on the kitchen table. Oh man, can I do it in the morning? The most I'll say is, you want me to do that right now or later? Yeah, I want you to do it right now. That's the whole conversation. That's the whole conversation. I'm not gonna have no sedition against my father. Same thing with my mother. My mother would do the same thing. I need you to take these boxes from the basement and move them out to the garage. My mother told me to do that. I did it. I took the boxes from the basement and I moved them to the garage. And I organized them neatly. And I organized the boxes that I couldn't take up, neatly where they were. Okay, I obeyed and honored. So it never ends. But for some reason, the woman, Vashti, thought that she was the exemption to the king's authority. Everybody else obeying the king. The king is ruling over an empire, and all of these men with thousands and thousands of soldiers are doing what he says to do. Men that have the power of life and death in their own territories are obeying the king. How would it look if Donald Trump is saying, I want all the governors to come to D.C. for a national governors meeting, and they're there. And he's having this big old feast, and he says, bring out my wife. Then the wife says, no, I don't want to go. The men are going to look at Donald Trump like, bro, you can't even rule your wife, man. And that's why the scriptures tell you got to use a certain level of discretion when having men that are watching over other men or even publicly helping with the work. The scripture says they have to have rulership of their own households. So right now, the king does not have control over his own households. But instead of the king saying, oh man, she just out of order, the king said, no, we can handle this now. We need to pass a law and a judgment. Okay? We need to pass a law and a judgment. So all of his top 3 guys, he commissioned to go find an answer to the question. What does it say in the King James their names are? Not in the Greek, but in the King James. What does it say in your book? In verse 14.
Harshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish.
This said rulers of Persia and the Medes.
7 nobles of Persia and Media.
What verse you in?
Verse 14.
Keep reading.
The 7 nobles of Persia and Media who had special access to the king and were highest in the kingdom.
Okay, so we got 3 right here. Maybe these 3 brought 4 more. We don't know. All right, so they said, verse 15, and they reported to him according to the laws how it was necessary to deal with Queen Vashti because she had not done the things which were commanded by the king through the eunuchs. So by law, the king had to do something to show that he was not in compliance with her rebellion against him. Because if he shows that he's in compliance, then all his leaders are going to rise up against him and saying that a woman rules over you, so you do not deserve to be the ruler over us because your woman is ruling over us by proxy, because now she can whisper something in your ear that's detrimental to us and the stability of our provinces, and you can be against it, but she can still get her way over us because that's just what happened. You told her to come before you, to appear and get the crown on her head and to show off her beauty, and she told you, no, you can't rule over your woman. So how are you going to rule over us? That's why scripture says if a person can't rule their own household, how should they have authority and rule in the house of the Most High? So we see that same concept being presented, after Israel was in captivity and after the temple was destroyed and it went back up. All right. Now it bears to mention also that Esther, Hadassah, and Mordecai are in the land of the Persian Mede Empire as free people. We weren't enslaved. We were free at this point. Okay. Verse 16. Then Memucan said to the king and the rulers, Queen Vashti, so this guy spoke up and spoke his mind. Queen Vashti has not wronged only the king, but also all the king's rulers and leaders. So they said she disrespected us and the king. In fact, he detailed for them the words of Vashti and how she opposed the king. So they just broke it down this way, this way. They like stoking a fire. They feeding all the oxygen they can. Because if the oxygen doesn't get put into the equation to highlight what's wrong with what she did, the people in the background are whispering about what's right and justifying what she did. So an order had to be executed. This is what she did wrong, highlighting it. It wasn't, I understand. And this is, women's lib and she's a free woman and we can't compel her to do anything and let her do what she's doing. She could do what she's doing, but there were consequences. Listen to what it said. It says, therefore, as she opposed King Ahasuerus, so today the rest of the princesses, meaning the rest of the women of the rulers, the rest of the princesses of the rulers of the Persians and the Medes, having heard the things that were said by her before the king, will dare likewise to dishonor their husbands. You see? So sometimes you can't get all the answers from Chat GPT. Sometimes the answer is going to be from the Bible, Old and New Testament. So the Bible is saying something has to be done. If not, then everybody's going to think that they could do what Vashti did and get away with it. And is not that the message appropriate for this season right now? Is not that the appropriate message for right now? If we don't do this, everybody's going to start to dishonor their husbands. Now, it also bears to mention that the word for husband just means man, both in the Greek and in the Hebrew oftentimes. It's ish and andros, respectively. Well, in Greek, in the Hebrew, and in the Greek. It's just man. There's no special word for husband. Husband is a generic word. It means a man. That's it. It means a man or of a man in Greek, but in Hebrew, it can mean an owner, it can mean a ruler, or it can mean a man, with man being the most simplest term used. Which understanding the Hebrew concept and the Greek concepts gives you a basic understanding. I'm wondering what's going on with this because it's saying something going on. Let me see when you pull up again. And make sure you're not pulling up from you're pulling up from a whole different account. Pull this up, but pull it up. So they don't want the woman to dishonor the husband. So they have to put, measures in place. Which account is this? So they have to put measures in place. No, from another account. Okay. All right. So they have to put measures in place. And wonder because they're saying like something went wrong. They have to put measures in place. Why? So that the other women be like, yo, we can't do this. Is not this the same concept that Yahweh put in place? He said, if a man does this to another man's woman, then you have to punish him like this. So the others will what? Hear and fear. And that's the same concept, is that unlawful behavior with no repercussions encourages unlawful behavior. So there has to be repercussions. And the Holy Spirit is speaking to us through this chapter. If you know, you know. All right? IYK. All right? If you know, you know. So it wasn't just no sweeping it under the rug. Oh man, that's Vashti. She be tripping sometimes. Oh, Vashti has mental problems, or Vashti's just mean sometimes, or Vashti got some problems. Vashti had a rough upbringing. Nobody took none of that into consideration. Nobody considered Vashti's dishonor her husband as a weakness of a weaker vessel, right? We don't know nothing about Vashti, her background, her family, where she was raised. Well, Vashti from New York, and that's how New York girls are. That's how New York women are. You know what I'm saying? Or Vashti she used to be a Mormon, so that's how Mormons are. Or Vashti is from Kenya. Women in Kenya are very headstrong. And I was like, nah, Vashti is dishonoring her husband. All right. So now let's continue on. Verse 19. If therefore it seems good to the king, let him prescribe a royal decree, and let it be written corresponding to the laws of the Medes and Persians, and do not let it be used otherwise. All right. And do not let the queen go into him any longer. And let the king give her queenship to a woman more worthy than she. Now, and whenever you hear language like that, instantly I think about Nino Brown with the bottle of champagne. When he says, I shall cancel my agreement and relationship with this woman, and I shall acquire another. But he says it in more powerful language. All right. So, but this is what's happening. They look. Before him, who do you think he learned it from? Who did he learn from? He learned from King David. Like, oh, you want to talk to me like that? Well, you ain't gotta worry about no. You cool. You ain't gonna worry about me seeing you no more. All right, we ain't gonna worry about me seeing you no more. So King David, he told me, Kyle, all right, I ain't gonna touch you no more. And I'll be even more talked about in the eyes of the maidens. And true to promise, when David was old, they said, when David was old, all right, and he started losing his body's ability to retain heat, he said they went and found him a young Issacharite woman, we'll say woman, and she laid in the bed with him to keep him warm at night. Imagine the look on Michal's face when she heard about that. And she was probably like, doggone it, he sure did tell me that. But this was like years later. This was years later. All right. So they said that the queen can't go into the king no more. This is what his men are telling him. The queen can't come into you no more, man. She can't come see you no more. And not only that, you got to get another queen. You got to get another, what do you call a top queen? I don't know the word for the top queen, but let's call it a queen. You got to get another lead queen. All right. Now, check this out. And let the king's law be obeyed, which, if it should work in his kingdom in this way, all the women will show honor to their men, from the poor to the rich. So this is something I was expecting, no matter how poor you were, no matter how many beds you had to sleep in, what kind of material your floor was made of, how many changes of garments you had. Every woman was expected to give the same level of respect and honor to their man, no matter what his station was in society, no matter how much resources he had access to, no matter what his social status was, whether he was out there picking cotton, picking linen, whether he was the king's barber, or whether he was the teacher to the king's children, or whether he was a ruler over many areas of the biggest province of the empire. Every man was expected to get the same level of respect and honor from his wife. And this is the same thing we see in Genesis. Your desire shall be unto your man, and he shall rule over you. And if the king would allow this woman to exercise this authority and disobey him, and he's now obeying the woman, they knew that they would be upsetting the primordial order of creation. When Yahweh told Eve, your desire shall be unto your husband, and he shall rule over you. So now she becomes extremely out of order, right? Extremely out of order with who? With the Most High also. Right? With the Most High also. I think I might have found a problem. I think I'm broadcasting to the wrong YouTube page. That's why people can't find it. Yeah, it's going to the wrong one. I don't know if I can even share it to the other one. Yeah, that's what's happening. Yep. So I would have to open up the other one. All right, let me see something real quick, fam. I got to open up this other YouTube do it live, and then share their screen, but don't make a difference now because it ain't gonna be able to get seen right there. Yeah, it's the wrong one. Where was I? So every man is afforded the same level of rights in society, especially in the Middle East. And they're upsetting, you're upsetting the course of Yahweh's nature of expectation between men and women dynamics when you say we're gonna do it our way, and the woman says, I'm not gonna do what the man says. All right. So now I'm gonna read that verse again. Verse 20. And let the king's law be obeyed, which, if it should work in his kingdom in this way, all the women will show honor to their men, from the poor to the rich. From the poor to the rich. And the word pleased the king and his rulers. He was like, oh man, nah, don't do that to her. I want her back. Baby, come back. Any fool can see I was wrong. Without you. I just can't live without you. I mean, do you not think he had a heart? I mean, this ain't the lion from Wizard of Oz. I mean, he has a heart. But his authority and the stability of the families of his jurisdictions were more important than his personal feelings toward Vashti. So he had to make a call. What am I going to do? Am I going to please Vashti? Or am I going to make a decision that's going to have a positive impact on my whole nation, or a negative impact? I don't got to do what you said to do. Vashti didn't come when the king said to come. That's what's going to be echoing through every household in the Persian Mede Empire. Okay? That's what's going to be echoing through every aspect of the Persian Mede Empire. Okay? And the leaders knew this. The leaders knew how much of an impact the king's decision was going to have. Okay? And, just to give it, some perspective, okay? When you're talking about India, Iran, Afghanistan, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Turkey, Georgia, parts of Russia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Pakistan, all right, going all the way over, these are the regions of the empire. That's how big the region was. All right. And I believe going up into parts of China. Okay. Going into parts of China. So this is not just no little local production. This is a major international empire. A major international empire, y'all. So they're like, yo, like, we're gonna have some problems if we don't get this thing together. Just look on the map. The empire even went down into parts of Sudan, modern day Sudan. Okay. So this was a major problem. So they saw rebellion. They saw the woman's dishonoring of her husband as something that would have global implications, in other words. And what can they do? How can your authority exceed the authority of the king in his own household? The king didn't even do that. So now you know the example. No, you can't do nothing to the woman if she dishonors you and doesn't obey you, because the king didn't do nothing to his woman. So what are you saying about the king? And his leaders knew this. So they said, rich and poor. Verse 21. And the word pleased the king and the rulers. And the king did just as Memucan said. And he sent word throughout all the kingdom in every territory in their language. They said, yo, we're going to make sure everybody understands this. We'll make sure everybody understands what's going on. What's going on. We're going to translate it. It says, so that there would be, now this is going to be hard to digest. Okay. This says, so that there would be fear for the men in their houses. So not fear in the sense of walking around tiptoes. What kind of fear are we talking about here? We're talking about a fear of the repercussions. Not the fear of doing good. Not the fear of doing righteousness, but the fear of doing wrong and the repercussions. That's what the fear is talking about. You know, because growing up, every child is afraid. You know, you're afraid of your mother. You're afraid of your father when you come home with all E's on your report card. But when it's the day that you were born and your mother and your father are looking at you, you're not afraid then. You know, they're looking at me, thankful for me being born. Or when you bring in your mother or your father something home to them, or you sitting down, you know, eating a dinner, or you giving your parent a hug goodnight, you're not afraid. So this fear that it's talking about is not a foreboding, ever-present, you know, a foreboding, ever-present, stressful, negative feeling. But it was a fear of the repercussion. Vashti had no fear of the repercussions. Vashti had no fear of what was going to happen to her. So that made Vashti do something that was wrong. Because she wasn't afraid of what was going to happen. So this consequence that the king is saying to his men, I agree with you all. Yeah, we're going to do that. That's what the scripture is talking about. That's the fear, the consequence after the fact. That's why the scripture says, if you do right, you know, why should you fear? So people think, oh yeah, the fear is talking about you just walking around thinking that somebody's gonna, you know, do something very bad and mean towards you throughout the day. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about the repercussions. In other words, if you're sitting down eating dinner with your child and you ask your son, you know, you ask your child to pass something to you, or you pass something to your child and dinner's going well, all right? And then you ask your child, can you pass me the cinnamon? And your child tells you, get it yourself. And you say, okay, I'll get it. Sorry to bother you. And you keep that same attitude towards your child, that child has no fear of the consequences that you can impose upon them. But if you discipline that child at that moment or whenever you want to for that act, and they know I'm getting disciplined for this act, for these things that I said against my parent, now that child has fear. Not fear of passing you a cinnamon, not fear of loving you, but fear of dishonoring you. So in this first chapter, you know, we have a lot of information. But we see in this first chapter that everybody was aware of what needed to be done. And everybody was in agreement with what needed to be done. And they actually did legislation saying what was going to happen. They didn't worry about what anybody was going to say, what the people outside the empire were going to say. what are the Greeks going to think about us? They didn't worry about any of that. They said this is the right thing to do, and this is how we're going to handle this. Okay, this is how we're going to handle this. Seven. This got 7 princes. The other one got 3 in Mario. They said this is how we're going to handle it. They said pass the law because she didn't obey you. All right. And she disrespected all of the people of the empire. So they said, we're going to pass this law. You know, she can't come see you again. Not only can she not come see you again, strip her title from her too. You know, strip her title from her. She's no longer the top queen. Okay, she's no longer the top queen. And that was punishment enough. So there was a severing. You know, there was a severing in the king's household. You know, and you know what happened? She got what she wanted. She didn't want to come to the king. She didn't want to fall in line in the proper chain of command. The king said, you don't got to come see me. Stay where you at. And you don't got to be in the chain of command because you're removed from it. And somebody else is going to replace you. And it's a hard lesson. It's a hard lesson for a lot of people to be able to absorb. All right. Now, with that being said, I think we went into a lot. We didn't go into a lot of other books of the Bible. I referenced some, but we didn't go to them. Let's open the floor real quick, but no pressure, you know, on you. You know, so when I say real quick, I don't mean I'm not pressuring you to like hurry up and say what you want to say in, you know, in only 10 seconds. Just the way I talk. Almost like one time. Just open up the floor one time. Anybody have any comments or any questions or statements that they want to share? The floor is yours. Maria.
I just want to say that man, like, very, very insightful, and I think that you know that would be a great example. That chapter would be a great example for any marriage counsel. You know what I'm saying? Because you seeing this in action. You're seeing the Proverbs in action. You're seeing, what Timothy spoke about in action. You know what I'm saying? In First Timothy, and in other books, like, yeah, that's really insightful, and it really shows you, the importance. And you see it even with our forefathers. You know what I'm saying? You see it even with our forefathers, and the negative side of, you know what, I'm gonna do this for this woman, even if you know what I'm saying, or just not regarding the consequences of doing that for that woman, and not holding back for the sake of the nation. You know what I'm saying? And executing that judgment for the sake of the nation. You really see it in real time in this chapter. So that's all I gotta say.
Khan. Yeah, the water. Yeah, Isaiah, I opened up the wrong account to do the YouTube broadcast. So I'm about to put the link into this group again now. So if anybody wanted to, share that link or have access to that link, it's in the group now.
Also too, like, also like, yeah, I don't know if Kodashi were going to speak. Go ahead,
No, I was just going to say Thwadi Hour.
All right, Tawada Yahweh. But what I'll do though is I'll start the broadcast on a regular channel later on, and then I'll share this so I'll have this broadcast playing, and then I'll share the screen so it seems like it's live, but it's not playing in real time, but it'll be playing and sharing on the other channel, the regular Banya Yashala Mashra Yashala channel. So I'll do that when we get off of here. All right, what do you want to say, Marshall?
I was going to say real quick. Joseph, when Joseph went into Egypt, like, now imagine if he would have actually slept with, you know what I'm saying? Who was it? Well, I forgot her name. I know it was Pharaoh's.
Is that Potiphar's woman?
Yeah, Imagine if he actually would have did that. You know what I'm saying? Like, if he would have received any vindication from Yahweh, but instead he resisted that and did receive vindication from Yahweh, and his family was taken care of. You know what I'm saying? His family was taken care of. So, they came to Egypt, and they saw their brother, and he got to see his siblings, and he was able to live doing the right thing. You know what I'm saying? So, that's another insightful aspect of this.
Yeah, so you never know what's going to happen as a result of a man yielding to the authority of a woman, giving a woman what she wants from that man, even though it's wrong and against the laws and the structure of the Most High. You never know what impact is going to have short-term or long-term. In our case, if Joseph was not a righteous man and he would have, snuck around with that lady, Potiphar's wife, having inappropriate contact with her, violating the boundaries of the woman's relationship with the man, then the whole nation of Yasharallah would have been in jeopardy, because Joseph's temptation and desire couldn't be quelled. So it's very important for a man, if this experience is about nothing else, it's about the virtue of operating righteously within your natural office assigned by the Most High. Because Hadassah became a helpmeet for the whole nation. And the king maintained his authority over his household. Meanwhile, you got the white man on the sidelines, the Edomite. I don't know what color he was. At that point, he could have probably been brown, honestly, living amongst the Persians and them for a few generations. But Haman, the Edomite, he comes in and wants to commit genocide against the whole nation of Israel. And through that, Esther rose up, a virtuous woman, a righteous woman, an honorable woman, willing to sacrifice herself, put her life on the line in order to appear before the king for the king to have mercy on her people and to have the opportunity to explain. Fasting first, seeking the Most High first. She didn't come back and say, well, the Most High told me to break his laws. And then her uncle, remember the uncle, and this is what people have to realize in the dream. Even if you're reading the King James Bible, when it has the book of Esther and then it has the additions to Esther, it still tells you that before everything went down, the Most High gave a dream, allowed a dream to come to Mordecai. Mordecai saw the whole story before everything jumped off. And he was the leader of Esther. He was in charge of Esther. He was in charge of Esther. So this thing that Esther did, this whole unfolding, it didn't just come from the clear blue sky. You can't come and be like, well, you know, the Most High showed me this or told me this, or I feel this in my spirit based on what the scripture says. And then a woman come and be like, and you be like, oh, my bad. You right, woman, I'm wrong. Most High gonna jack you up for that, man. When you start to go in a direction where the woman goes, but it's opposite to what the direction that the man is trying to go. Okay? What the man is trying to go. So you have to make the ultimate decision. And that's what we have to get through our thick skulls. We, as the man, have the last decision. The woman can come back and be like, well, you know what? That was a bad decision that you made, and I told you not to do it. But that can set the precedent for her being in 100% agreement with everything you want to do. Because that leads to usurping authority. That is not how Hamashiach operated with his disciples, and that's not how Yahweh operated with his son. We want agreement in righteousness. And we want resistance to death and danger, hurt and harm. Not because of inconvenience. Not because we're going to have consequences that are going to be okay to absorb. This is a loss that we can absorb. Okay? Nobody can tell, few people, I should say, can tell the future. But in this situation, Mordecai had already seen the future. He saw a dream. So when Esther's going through what she's going through, Mordecai like, yo, this is exactly, you know, what I dreamed about. I knew this was going to happen. She prepared, the Most High prepared Esther's head, which was Mordecai. Mordecai was already prepared, you know, for everything that was about to happen. He saw the dream, he saw the vision. So then when it comes about, now the Most High is allowing Esther to be used to be a part of the salvation and the redemption of the whole nation. Because we were all in jeopardy. We were all in danger of being, you know, eliminated. Our whole lineage knocked out in that empire. Because remember, during that same time frame, there were Israelites still in the land of Israel. Okay. So that's what we got for today. But the key is to stay in order with the head of the relationship. You got to stay in order. You can't just do things because you feel like you're right, or you feel like it's the right thing to do, or the Most High spoke to you, and now you're going to disobey your husband. So you're saying that now I don't got to go through you, bro. Like the Most High, he's speaking to me. He ain't speaking to you. The Most High is speaking to me to tell you that you're wrong and that I'm going to make the executive decisions in this relationship, not you, because I'm operating under Yahweh's authority. Even if there's, you know, and a woman can't do that. If there's sin involved, the Most High didn't speak to you or tell you about that sin. The Most High is telling you in his word. If the man is saying, yeah, I want to have a We're gonna have a pork roast tomorrow. You don't gotta say the Most High had a dream and said, don't do this. No. His word is sufficient to say, hey, Yahweh said, don't do this. That's it. Or I want to get a green door. I want to paint the door green. And woman said, I want to paint the door red. And they argue about it. And the woman comes and say, I had a dream last night, and the Most High said to paint the door red. Now the man's gonna feel, well, I'm opposing the Most High. If I don't have this, and that's why it's dangerous for people to let people come at them like that about how the Most High told them something in a dream, what everybody else needs to do to comply with them. Dreams are meant for guides and symbols, but not as do this between a man and a woman. The woman, I dreamed this, so we got to do this. Because a man that's in that type of Christianity, false Christianity mindset would be like, well, the Lord spoke to her in the dream. So, I got to comply with what she said to do because the Lord spoke to her in the dream. Always remember, Mordecai was first, then Esther. You got the authority over your family. The king had the authority over Vashti and over Esther eventually, and over everybody in the empire in the grand scheme of things. So if the queen's like, I'm not going to do what you said to do, she's usurping his authority. She's making herself to be the leader. All right. Now she can come and say, hey, like the brother said, well, Pilate, hey, I had a dream to mess with this guy, but ultimately it was still Pilate's decision. What he was going to do, Pontius Pilate. It was still his decision on how he was going to handle the situation. All right, so it's been an hour, 26 minutes. Before we shut down, is there anybody that has any questions or comments?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
You said that you had it recorded on the wrong YouTube?
Yes.
Okay, because there was like a whole section. I don't know what's going on with my phone, but I missed a lot of what you were saying.
I put the link to it inside the group right here.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able finally to connect to it though.
I had to restart my phone, I guess.
Okay. So the link to this session is inside of the conversation of this group on this messenger group, so you can catch it on there. Follow the link.
Okay.
But I also when this is over, I'll do another live with it going again. On the other under proper the normal channel. Okay. All right.
Con, I got a quick question real quick.
Okay.
So, being that Esther was with the Persian king, how would you recommend a woman being in a relationship with a man that's not necessarily, I guess, keeping the commandments to the best of his ability, or vice versa? A man being in that situation.
I mean, the same rules of the rules of the Torah would have to still govern the relationship, and any violation of that would be a problem with the Most High. If it's not a violation against the laws of the Most High, then each party in that marriage has to operate within their normal biblical social, their social order. Does that make sense?
Con. Yeah, because I just think it's interesting, like being at the beginning of the story is like Vashti, like, no, I ain't coming, and then, it's kind of like you were saying, like that, it wasn't really like the fear of like a terror, but like it was more so like a a virus that could kind of spread through the kingdom, like
Right.
that kind of spirit could, you know, go through the women.
Right.
I think it was just like, you know, just even though it was like a Gentile foreign kingdom, you still see like the order of the Most High, like the man being in authority and stuff. So
yeah, we see these type of parallels throughout the Bible, especially with King David, when King David came down hard on Michal. But also, this was the normal social environment at that time in that part of the world and in the whole world. Actually, it's only the Edomites that came along and tried to allow, you know, the structure of the household to be topsy-turvy or to be on equal standings, because it gives him power and his rulership. If that woman defies the man to the benefit of the government structure, then it's going to be, you know, beneficial to their government structure. So they set that up deliberately, you know, in the Western world, quote unquote. But in this ancient world, even though, you know, you're saying that there were Gentiles, and we can see it in Gentile world and Gentile society, that's because it wasn't limited to Israelites or Gentiles. This was like the standard across the board in all kingdoms. The woman was expected, you know, apparently we see it in the Bible, you know, we see it in even going back before the Torah was given, we see it with Jacob. When Jacob sat down with Shechem and them, and about his daughter Dinah. Dinah was like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. She was still subject to her brothers and her father to figure out how and if she was gonna get married to this man. You see? So it was always a patriarchal, male-dominated society. And it still is, but society just gives women certain liberties now because it's to their benefit. But when you go into other countries, though, it's still the way it is that we read about, you know, in the scriptures. Okay. Jay, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I remember you were saying earlier, you said that I think you were speaking of Iran, and you said they're not Edom or Ishmael.
Mm-hmm.
Then what'd you say they were?
They're when you say the Persian Mede Empire, Mede is Medes or Madai, and they belong to the nation of. They're a Japhetic people. They're one of the sons of Japhet. When you look in Genesis chapter 10, it lists the Medes right there. Okay. Now the Persian part of it was over by Iran. Persia is from Persia, and Persia is from Fars, like Farsi. That's what they speak. The language is Farsi. So the Farsi and the Persians are the same people. Just one is a P and one is an F. Then when you go into Madai, or the Mede part of the empire, that's kind of going east of Iran, the top part of Iraq, and then that little small area underneath of the Caspian Sea where you got like Armenia at. So that eastern Turkey, Armenia, and then going kind of south into Iraq, and then east further into Iran, modern Iran. So that, but both of them are it's a Japhetic people. They're Japhet. Okay.
I might be confused here, but maybe didn't Japheth ultimately become Edom, or
no. When you look in Maccabees chapter 1, it talks about Philip's wars, and Alexander took over. What they did was push out the original brown-skinned Japhetic people. They pushed them out, and those people went into like some of the islands of the Pacific. All right. So Edom comes from Shem. Specifically, Edom comes from Isaac. But the Japhetic people, they have a whole different father, and they were along the Mediterranean areas, the Peloponnesians, the Etruscans, and other nations, the other nations that existed in that time frame. But under Philip and Alexander, the Edomites rose up, and they fought against the Dorians and other native native Japhetic people in the region. They fought against them, and then they took their land. All right. So that's how Edom got control over that Mediterranean region where Greece was. But they migrated to Greece from the Middle East, from Edom's territory. If you go into Edom's territory, especially south where Petra is, you got these big, cliffs that give you a lot of protection from the sun. All right. And then from there, you go into Greece, they can handle that sun, over in Greece. But the Japhetic people got pushed out of their area. Some of them may still be there, but Edom didn't become Japhet, and Japhet didn't become Edom. Edom took over some Japhetic regions, and sometimes they would take over their names too. They took over some of their names also, as far as the territorial names and the political names. All right, so that's how. But when you talk about like a lot of the Spartans and things like that, some of them were brown skin and Edomite, Japhet and Edom, living together. But ultimately, Edom took over, and Edom structured the kingdoms, and Edom united his people, and then they had the other people up under them. They couldn't do it by themselves, so they had other Gentile people in their armies, that other people fighting beside them, and that was one of Alexander's strengths. Alexander was one of the main times when people united an army just of all sorts of people and said, we're going to just unite everybody and make everybody one people, and we're going to let everybody do their own thing, but we're going to still be the ones that are ruling. So that's why he left rulers in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Armenia, in parts of Iran and Iraq. He left rulers in those places that were from his people. And that's when you go back into First Maccabees, when it talks about how his empire was divided. When he died, he wrote out before he died that the empire was going to be given to his top 4 Edomite Greek generals to avoid any type of civil wars. So everybody got their portion. And then from there, the so-called white man started to take over. But the Edomites could not persist. They lost their empires, but they kept that Mediterranean stronghold, went into Europe, pushed out more brown people, that were in Europe. Some of them may still be there. But like I said, eventually a lot of them, the Japhetic people, ended up going into the Pacific region. When you're talking about like Papua New Guinea, and then you got Israelites and Japhet that started to live together over in places like Samoa, Hawaii. That's Japhet and Israel kind of was living together in those places. But those seafaring people in the Mediterranean, in the Pacific, originated from the Mediterranean, and they kept a lot of their seafaring and boat building and navigation sciences that they learned when they were in the Mediterranean, and they applied it to and expanded upon it once they went into the Pacific. But Japhet is a totally different people. When you look in the book of Numbers, I think it's chapter Numbers 23 and 24, it talks about Edom was the head of the nations, but he's gonna fall. He's gonna fall. So that's telling us that the rulers of most of these modern nations are descendants of the Edomites. That goes into America, Russia. It goes into Greece. All these powerful nations, Russia, are powered by Edomite families. Not only Edomite, but it specifically says Amalek. So Amalek is actually the Edomite family. So you look in Genesis chapter 36, you see that Amalek is one of the sons of Edom. All right. And that's why we got in Revelation chapter 17, when it talks about the nations and the great red, the red dragon with the 7 heads. Again, that red is Edom or Edom. So that's talking about the Edomite people ruling over the modern world and being that last kingdom that's gonna fall. But Japhet is a whole nother part of the equation. All right, Japhet is, it goes into Japhet somewhat, in other chapters and prophecies, but Japhet doesn't really fit prominently, in a lot of last day prophecies. Who fits prominently in the last day prophecies is gonna be is gonna be Esau, the Edomites, the red nation. They figure so prominently, inside of the prophecies of the last days that we could never say that they're Japhet, because they're doing everything that the Bible says is going to be done by by the Edomites. So when you talk about Meshach and Tubal and Gog and all of that, Gog is another Mede nation, not Mede, but another Japhetic nation. That goes into like between the Caspian and Black Sea, where you got the Caucasus Mountains. You got some Japhetic people that were there. But again, Esau came and took over that territory, and that's what Job was talking about. And when you go into the book of Job, Job says that these people were pushed away from among men, and they were pushed into the mountains. I believe when you go into Job, Job chapter 30, and you start round about the 5th verse, it tells you how people that were among us were pushed from among us. And that's talking about the Edomite migration that happened during Job's time someplace. And then you go into the book of Obadiah. It talks about the Edomites were going to dwell in the caves and in the cliffs of the rocks, not Japhet. So all these prophecies we see about the so-called white man are prophecies that the Bible, all these prophecies we see in the Bible, all these prophecies and descriptions about Edom and about a people that are not named fit the so-called white man today, linking him to be the Edomites that the Bible talks about, not the he lives in Japhetic land because he took it over, but he's not Japhet. And I yield with that.
Water for that.
All right, Yonder boy. You're welcome. Okay, any other questions or comments before we shut down? All right, everybody. So talk to y'all later. Enjoy your Purim and Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.